I just wanted to take a minute to share with you guys a little bit about Links to Success and kind of why we decided to create this series. We know that there's a lot of, uncertainty going on right now. Times are tough. I know me personally, I have a couple people very close to me that have been either laid off or furloughed during these times. And some people are just looking for a change and looking for a new opportunity as well. So, we wanted to help reach as many people as we can and help differentiate themselves in an already competitive market, right? And the 5 topics that we chose to focus on were resumes, job search. This episode that we're on now is networking. So you're joining us for episode 3. You can reach out to us for information on the prior 2 episodes, and definitely stay tuned for our next 2, which are going to be talking about interviewing as well as salary negotiations. So we appreciate you sticking with us throughout the series. And if you're just joining us, definitely stay tuned for the rest of the series.
Your web series is hosted by EdgeLink. You may be wondering, who's EdgeLink? We're a premier boutique staffing firm specialized in technology. We're local to Denver and Portland, also the Salt Lake City area. By specialized, I mean that's all we do. Day in and day out, it's just tech. We have 2 different divisions to our company: contract and contract to hire, and direct hire, which is full-time roles as well. This is our motto, we are in the business of positively impacting the lives of the people and the clients that we touch.
Yes, we are. And some of you might be wondering, why work with an agency like EdgeLink, and what would that relationship even look like? And, first and foremost, keep in mind that for a candidate, working with an agency like us has no cost to you, and you're already doing so much work in your own job search that you owe it to yourself to have more coverage of the market, right? And our recruiters and our account managers, they're getting real-time updates on not only the industry, but the types of organizations and the specific organizations that you're interested in working for. So make sure that you're staying in constant contact, and that you upfront and honest about your needs and what you're looking for, right? Treat it as a partnership with your recruiters. On top of that, besides just time relief and helping drive the process, we can help with things like resumes. And as we said, we had a great presentation on resumes, and you can contact us for information on that as well. Any other questions or information needed, as we said, we're going to try to answer all the questions that we can. But if we don't happen to get to something, or if something comes to you later on, feel free to email us at info@edgelink.com for any more information needed. Again, that's info@edgelink.com.
All right, guys. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce your speaker for today. Today we have Ophelia Yan. She is an EdgeLink employee and head of people and experience at EdgeLink. So Ophelia, forgive me as I fumble through all of your many qualifications. I'm going to do the best I can. Ophelia has over 10 years of HR experience, and she is a member of the Society of Human Resource Management since 2008. She's been serving actively on that board of directors and local and regional Society of Human Resource Management chapters for the past 5 years. Ophelia is certified as a senior professional in human resources, as well as a Society of Human Resource Management senior certified professional. I killed it. And on top of that, cherry on top, she was one of the youngest people to pass her global professional and human resources exam prior to earning that certification in 2011. Without further ado, grab your notebooks, grab your pens, take some notes. Ophelia's about to blow your mind.
Thanks so much, Jennifer and Iman. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining me today. I am super excited to spend the next 30 minutes with you talking to you about networking and just really how to keep yourself from getting lost in the shuffle. So it's really easy to let this process fall by the wayside for you and to just slowly fall off the face of the earth with the people that you once knew. We're here today to stop that, right? So now, when you think about the word networking, I don't know about you, but I kind of cringe. I don't like it. I'd like to start by telling you a little bit more about myself. I know Jennifer just introduced me by reading you my bio, but honestly, that doesn't tell you about me and about my personality as it relates to networking, because we're all different people. Now, I am naturally extroverted. I usually get my energy from being around people. But that word, networking, I hate it so much. And why? Why? Well, I'll talk about that here in a minute. I'll tell you that I've had times in my life when I've been really, really good at networking, and I've also had times in my life when I've been really, really bad at it. I completely dread some networking events while others get me really, really excited. But why? How do we work through these negative feelings that we might have? Well, that's exactly what I'm here to share with you today. So, when you picture the ugly parts of networking, what comes up in your mind? So if you can just use the chat box, talk to me a little bit about this. What do you think about when you think of networking that just kind of makes you cringe a little bit? I'll share with you one of the things I hate the most. Small talk. Oh my gosh. I don't really like talking about the weather. I just don't. I get it. We all experience it. It's a mutual connection, but it just kind of seems a little pointless, a little awkward. You're not really getting anything from that conversation, and I'm pretty sure the other person isn't either. So, a lot of people don't want to or don't feel comfortable talking about things that don't really matter, and it's one of the main reasons that I despise going to some networking events. Now, another thing is you're probably going to encounter someone who's trying to sell you something. And even if you do, even if you don't want it, even if you tell them you're like, nah, not really interested, they're still ready to sell it to you. They're ready with their pitch. They just want you to buy. They just want you to buy. And it's so uncomfortable to me. It's so uncomfortable for somebody that's just not really reading the room right and not, kind of gauging my body language and listening to my words. Now, I don't know if you've ever showed up to an event where it looked like every single person knew each other already, right? So everyone's in their groups and having conversations, and you show up and you're just standing there alone and you just feel awkward. You just feel like, oh my gosh, I have no friends. Nobody, nobody wants to talk to me. This is just an awful feeling, right? And then there are those people that want something from you. You're like, okay, I don't know what you want. I don't know what I can give you. I just don't feel good about it. And then another thing is, this is something that I have to do, not something that I want to do. And I'll elaborate on that a little bit more. And then, if it's an event, oftentimes there's free food, right? So for me, that food sometimes can get me in the door. If I tell myself there's going to be good food, that gets me in the door. But then it is up to me to figure out what I'm there to accomplish. What am I actually here to do? Now, I'll take a step back and I want to elaborate a little bit more on this is something I have to do and not something that I want to do. So, like I said, when I think about networking, my gut reaction is that I don't like it. When you've been in business, you feel like this is something that you absolutely have to do. People tell you this all the time. Oh, networking, that's how you get a job. That's how you do business. And for a lot of us, I think that we can really hate how networking makes us feel. Sometimes it makes us feel dirty. It can make us feel fake or like you're exploiting someone or just uncomfortable, kind of like that used car salesman stereotype that, is out there. There are those people that just love networking, usually extroverts who just love that social interaction and just thrive on it and, kind of want to talk to anyone and everyone. But for other people, it just kind of ends up feeling like, almost like a necessary evil. Well, I'll tell you that networking is what you make of it. And if you actually dislike the entire process, you probably aren't doing it right. And like I said, I don't always do it right. I know when I'm not doing it right. And we'll talk a little bit more kind of how to do it right. So when you look at networking from two schools of thought, you're looking at it from, I need someone to do something for me versus how can this relationship help me grow, help me move forward, help me accomplish something. And this is a very nuanced kind of approach. But when you look at networking as a tool to help elevate you or move you forward versus an actual obligation, it feels like more of an opportunity for discovery and learning than it does a chore, right? So like think about a work social related function that you're obligated to attend. You can tell yourself like, oh, I hate these things. I have to like put on a face, put on a show, schmooze, rub elbows, pretend to like it. Or you can take a step back, reshift your mindset and say, you know what? It could be interesting. Maybe something fun will happen. Maybe when I least expect it, I'm going to have a conversation that either brings up a new idea or, leads me to a new experience or new opportunities. So the biggest takeaway here is that if you look at networking as a way to socialize, make friends, and build relationships, you'll likely have a more positive view on it than if you see it as a way to promote yourself or build your career. You'll probably dislike it a lot more. So once again, I try to look at networking as a way to add to my community rather than carry out a personal agenda. Now, let's take a minute, step back, and try to understand what the term networking really means. So to find the network or the definition of what networking really is, I just went into the Google and I typed in the word networking, and this is what came up. The linking of computers to allow them to operate interactively. Now, I'm kidding. Well, half kidding. That is a definition of networking, and a very valuable one, I might add, but not one that we're here to talk about today. However, if that is the definition that you love to talk about, please, please, please reach out to us. We would love to chat with you more about your career goals. Now, let's look at the definition that we are here for. So this says, the action or process of interacting with others to exchange information and develop professional or social contacts, okay? The action or process of interacting with others to exchange information and develop professional or social contacts. Now, now that you know that technical definition, what does this actually mean to you? Do you see it as, being that thing that you dread, or does this kind of more align with that growth opportunity or, exchanging of information and learning? So feel free and pop your thoughts in the chat box when you have a minute. I'd love to hear from you. So now that we've identified how we feel about networking, let's go ahead and switch gears and talk about how to actually do it. Where do we start? All right. So a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll just start, I don't know, just aiming anywhere, just kind of, sending out messages, hoping that something lands. I recommend kind of starting from scratch and mapping out your network. So when I say that, what I'm asking is for you to, on a piece of paper, on a Word document, whatever you need to do, create a map so that you can better understand your network and not just blindly connect with others. Now, I'm not saying that blindly connecting with others can't work. It can, but it's really helpful to come up with a plan to help you understand what your network looks like, who you can connect to you, to others, make requests of, and potentially leverage for influence. So it's easiest to start with friends and family. Most of us have one or both of those, right? Hopefully, at least one. And then go ahead and work from there. So, when you think about your friends, think about how you know each friend. So you might have your closest friends that you spend the most time with. You might have friends from elementary school, high school, college. You might have friends from work. You might have friends from, professional organizations, whether that be, if you're in Portland, PDX WIT, other kinds of professional memberships. I belong to, I think, 2 HR groups. That are local here in Portland. You could belong to a neighborhood association. You could, belong to a sports team, dodgeball, baseball, basketball, soccer. You could just go to the gym. I used to go to the gym 6 days a week and met a lot of people that way. Volunteering, your faith-based groups, people that I've done informational interviews with in the past. It's definitely good to keep engaging with those people, but definitely remember that they exist. They are part of your network. And then you move into kind of the social media aspect. So, Facebook, LinkedIn, Slack groups. There are lots of different resources out there of people that just want to connect, people that want to, share ideas with each other. So, one group that I'm a part of on Facebook is a Buy Nothing group. It's basically just a group of people that live in my neighborhood who are buying nothing. So you're giving things to people for free and you're getting things from people for free. It's an amazing group. Random people in my neighborhood, but they are all part of my network. Another one is OTAT. So that's One Tail at a Time. That's the organization that I adopted my newest dog from. And they created a Facebook group for anybody who's adopted a dog through them. And it's phenomenal to see that group of people just talking with each other, sharing their experiences and whatnot. I'm part of a POC climbing group, so people of color, so people that don't identify as white. I'm part of a climbing group, and people just interact, and everyone has different experiences, but these are all groups that are part of my network that I don't even think about as being part of my network, because to me these are personal groups. These are groups to me that feel fun and exciting, and realistically it's all part of your network. So it's important to kind of take a look at that. And then I'm sure there are so many more layers, so take some time to think about who is actually in your network. Now, as a second step, it's important to really take some time to assess the relationships that you actually have. So depending on what type of network you're looking to build, and this can definitely change at different points in your life, you'll decide whether you're more interested in deeper connections or more connections. So think of this as quantity versus quality. What is your strategy? So if you're a recruiter, for example, you're likely to want to have a wider reach, a bigger audience. That relationship will likely be weaker because your asks are likely to be on the lighter side. You're likely wanting introductions or visibility, and you might not be asking for much beyond that. Now, some people might ask for more of their network, whether it's to buy something, support something, put their name behind something. And if that's the case, it's really important to have a strong relationship with the people that you regularly or repeatedly ask things of. Now, you can have a mixed approach as well. So I'll give you an example. I try to balance both of these on LinkedIn, and I make a conscious effort to try and only connect with people that I have either met in person or have had a conversation with. So this means that, yeah, potentially after this webinar, if you're like, I'm going to add her on LinkedIn, I might not accept, because if I don't know who you are, it feels weird to me. And I like to know a thing or two about my contacts, so that if somebody says, hey, can you introduce me to this person? Or, hey, have you ever worked with this person? What are they like? I want to know a little bit more about them. I can basically have a quality relationship there and have a warmer introduction. Now, another thing that you'll want to do, or that I recommend doing, is going through your map and think about how you met each person on it. So how did you first meet these people? So you can identify the organization, or if there is a person that introduced you to that person, figure out who that is and determine who the key players are within your network. Who routinely introduces you to people? Spend extra time nurturing those relationships. Those are the people who are the brokers of your future introductions. They are the ones that can help you further build your network, likely because it's something that they're good at doing. Now, it's important to not only look at how deep the connection to someone is, but also what the basis of that relationship is. So does this person offer career advice? Do they offer emotional support? In what ways does that person add to your network? Are they an industry expert? Can they teach you something new? What does that relationship really look like? So take a minute to look back over the last 2 to 3 years and figure out who you've had discussions with about, important school or work matters, right? Maybe you've bounced some ideas for debugging off of somebody. Maybe you have an idea for a new business. Who do you talk to about these things? Who can you talk to about these things? I think it's important to look at how people have been helpful to you in accomplishing your job, or your work or project, or whatnot, and think about the people that have given you leads or made introductions, offered advice, all of that. Think about who has influenced your career, list out those people as well, and make sure that you nurture those relationships. Now, this is the third and final step. And when I say step, it's kind of a false term, because you should be doing this on a regular basis. So imagine you got laid off today, which is, unfortunately a reality for many of us. Who are the 5 to 10 people that you would write to for advice or ask for advice, right? Make sure that you invest in those relationships regularly, and not just when you have a need. So, think about those people. It might be a family member, it might be just some random person that who only hit you up when they want something from you. That person, you probably don't love that person, whether they're asking for money, whether they're asking for something, but they never give you anything. They never contribute to anything that's meaningful in your life. They don't keep in touch with you. They just ask you. They ask you for things when you want something, when they want something. So, don't be that person. You don't want to be that person, right? So let's talk a little bit more about, kind of how to establish that relationship. in the times of COVID, things are weird, right? So, these are some of the steps to take to figure out how to actually engage. The first step is figuring out what you have to offer, and we'll talk about this in a future slide. I think it's helpful to start with your closest relationships first, check in with people, say hi, or rekindle old connections. So, I've got some friends that I haven't talked to in a long time. And I think sometimes just reaching out and touching base with them, seeing how things are going, that is really, really helpful to do because it just kind of awakens your network, right? Now, as I mentioned, things are weird. There's COVID, there's, protests, there's murder hornets, there's all of these different things. So I always recommend, at least right now, your message 6 months ago would probably be fine if it said, "How are you?" But to use that as your greeting or your opening line, "How are things going?" None of that. I don't generally recommend it right now because it's a loaded question. It's a heavy question. It's an emotional question. So consider a different greeting. You could say, "I hope you are doing well," or, something that acknowledges everything that's going on. It's just like, "I know that times are so weird or so, difficult right now, but da da da." And then lastly, personalize your message. And we'll kind of dig into this a little bit deeper. So when you take a look at this message, you're just like, "Hi, my name is Ophelia. I'm head of people and experience at EdgeLink. I see you work at ABC Company, and I would love to pick your brain about working there. What would be the best time to connect?" That seems fine. But think about how many times the person you're reaching out to has received that same LinkedIn message from person to person to person, right? Think about this message. It is one-sided. You are asking for a favor. That is not networking. And I think that it's important to recognize this could work. I'm not saying that it won't. This could work. There are a lot of very, very nice people out there. And depending on what community you belong to, there are lots of integrated and active networks where people are friendly and want to help you. But if you are in a different city, let's say, for example, like New York, this could be very different because there's lots of people asking for things all the time. This message also doesn't show why you reached out to that specific person. It just says like, "Hey, I want to learn about the company from you." It doesn't tell the person anything about you. So I recommend kind of doing something a little bit more detailed. "Hi, my name is Ophelia. I'm head of people and experience at EdgeLink. I found your profile after reading your topic about, or your article about, data science. And I found it interesting because, my partner is looking to get into data science. I also have a passion for data science and would love getting some perspective about it, from the, let's say, push notification aspect at, Airship, right? For example. I'm also happy to share some of the projects that I've worked on as well, and be specific about that. I'm an HR person, not a data scientist, but, make sure that you have that offer. Are you open and available for a 30-minute chat? Da, 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 da. So, and saying that I can work around your schedule shows that you're flexible. It shows that you're passionate about what it is that you're asking for. It's just really, really nice to be able to find that thing that you have in common so that you can geek out to something. It's really nice and really fun when you're like, "You love data science? I love data science. You want to talk about statistics? I want to talk about statistics." That is a good feeling for both parties. It's mutual, it's networking. Both parties have something to gain. And it shows exactly why you're reaching out to the person. Your message is clear, it's organized, and it's thoughtful. So one of the things that I mentioned is talking about what you have to offer, right? So this is something that everyone can do, right? What do I have to offer? Everyone has something to offer. Now, I'd like to start by pausing and talking a little bit about confidence and power. So if you approach networking with little confidence and you feel as though you have nothing to offer, you're not going to enjoy this process at all, okay? It's going to make you feel crummy and worthless. Now, Harvard Business Review Harvard Business Review did a study that showed if you could induce feelings of power and confidence in people, that they found networking to be less repulsive. So they found that people that feel powerless because maybe they're junior in their organizations, maybe they're a minority or any other reasons, maybe they feel like they have too little to give, they're the ones that are least likely to engage in networking, even though they're the ones who will probably derive the most benefit from it. And that to me is fascinating. So when we look at it, it's easy to focus on tangible things or task-related things like money or social connections or technical support or information, and ignore the other things that you can offer, like gratitude, recognition, and enhancing someone's reputation. So let's talk about some of these different offerings. And sometimes you do have to think outside of the box. We'll start with some of the ones I tried to put this kind of in order of like if you're more experienced to if you're less experienced, but if you're more experienced, you have the ability to offer mentorship. You have the ability to offer advice. You have a great network of people. And like I said, everybody has a network, so this should probably be further down on the list. But if you haven't analyzed it, you're probably like, I don't know what my network looks like. So, your network connections are also part of the resources that you can offer. You might have experience in the industry. You might, follow on specific trends. You can also offer emotional support. And I'm gonna pause right now and say, with everything that's going on right now, like I said, COVID, anti-racism protests, murder hornets, whatever, we all need emotional support right now, right? Like there's so much going on. Everyone is emotionally exhausted. We all could use a little bit of emotional support for our peers right now. I think it's important, to let people know that they matter, that you support them. Think about if you've offered them introductions before. I think it's really good to be able to lift each other up if you haven't done so. I think that's one area that is very, very relevant right now. If you're just like, maybe I have a job and I'm not really looking for a new one, reach out to people and make sure that they're doing okay. Make sure that they know that you support them. You can offer different perspectives. You can offer recommendations. So if you found a good article, videos, books, classes that people can take, I think somebody had recommended, hey, I was talking to them about a problem I was having, and I said, we have some of our team members are a little bit more introverted, and I want to help make them feel more comfortable talking up in meetings. I don't want them to, be outside of their comfort zone too much, but I also want to help them build and develop their skills. So she recommended to me an improv class. Never would have thought of that, about that. So, and then recognition, I think anytime somebody's ever reached out to me, I think the first person that ever reached out to me to do an informational interview, I felt so good. Like, I can't even begin to tell you, because I'm like, oh, you think that I can give you something, right? And so even just that acknowledgement, like, hey, you are ahead of where I am right now. Hey, you are a professional in the field. Hey, you have something that I can learn from you. That made me feel great. So even just that alone, I loved. And they, when they're appreciative, when they show you the gratitude, that makes a world of difference. So like I said, there's a couple different nuanced ways of looking at networking. And I think a lot of times when people approach it, they look at it from the perspective of what's in it for me and how can you help me? And like I said, when I first started kind of putting this together at the beginning of the week, and I was, kind of trying to figure out everything that I wanted to say, it felt a little weird to be putting on a webinar about networking when there's so much going on with COVID and, protesting racism and whatnot. But like I said, this is the time when your network needs you the most. People are hurting right now, and this is the perfect opportunity to show support. This is a perfect opportunity to think about your network in a different way than you have before. Not just how can you get me a job, but how can I help you? How can I make your day better? For me, one of the ways that I look at my network is how can I create community? How do I create a sense of belonging? So one of the things that I like to think about is my first day at a new school, right? Think about first day of college if you went to college, high school if you started a new school, or, let's say you moved a lot. First day at a new school. You don't know anybody. If you're in college, nobody knows anybody. Everyone's hoping to meet new people that they get along with so they can have a good time and they can enjoy themselves, but it's scary and it's awkward and nobody wants to make the first move because nobody wants to admit they don't know anybody. Nobody wants to admit that they don't have any friends. And it feels a little weird just jumping into a conversation with a stranger for a lot of people. Small talk, like I said, can be uncomfortable or feel forced or inauthentic. Now, when you think about those situations, one of the things that you can offer to your community, and when you're creating that community, you need to be what I call the fat penguin. You need to be the one to break the ice. It is so uncomfortable for everyone, right? So uncomfortable. But I think that it's really important to know that that is just one move that you can make because people will appreciate you for it. One move that you can make to say, hey, I don't know anybody. Do you know anybody? Great. Introduce me. Or you don't know anybody either? Great. Same boat, you know? And so you can just build relationships that way. You can show support. Even if it doesn't feel like it, you are still offering emotional support to somebody, because if somebody else is like, I don't know anybody, I feel awkward, I don't know what to do, you're offering emotional support by saying, hey, I'm just going to break the ice, right? So I think those are really, really helpful questions to have in the back of your mind. How can I help you? How can I make your day better? How can I create a sense of community? And how can I create a sense of belonging? One of the things that I remember, actually, I want to tell you a quick story. I think it was when I was in college, I was an intern at a bank. And I remember one of the things that I did there was I would have like monthly lunches, and they would be just group lunches with like 5 or 6 people. And they were usually with other interns or other people that were, you know, new to the industry, newer in their careers. And it's funny because when I think about those lunches that we went on, those are people that are still in my network. Those are, and this was, I don't know, not to date myself, but like 15 years ago. Those are people that I still keep in contact with today. And it's because of lunch. I would never have really known them if we didn't have lunch. That's all it was, just once a month, twice a month, you know, whatever, here and there. It made a huge difference. So keep that in mind as, you know, when you look at that, how you approach networking, sometimes it's just about creating that community. Now, as promised, I said I would give you some tips to stand out. So as you can see Waldo here, he is not very well hidden. I think that, you know, it's easy to just get lost. There's so much going out there. There's so much activity. And sometimes you're like, I just can't see the activity. So maybe it's there, maybe it's not. You don't know. Well, I think it's important to find ways to stand out. So one of those ways is to share some fun and personal, yet appropriate, I work in HR, right? Stories. So stories that really help people remember you, stories that build connection. You know, I think that in your introduction, if you talk about if there's a job, for example, that you always dreamed of, you know, if you were like, hey, it's been my dream since I was a little girl to develop an app that helped me X, Y, and Z, you know, and let's say the person like helped me develop like a game or something. And so you're like, you know, you reach out to somebody who is a software developer and, you know, creates games for a living. That is personal. That's something that will help build that connection. If you specify like what kind of game, you know, let's say like, you know, I remembered that when I was in college, loved StarCraft, loved Brood War, right? So you're like, you know, I spent this many hours playing Brood War, and you know, and tell like a funny anecdotal story about it. People remember those stories. People love stories. And I think storytelling is one of the best ways that you can build connections. It can help people remember who you are and what you're about. A second tip is, you know, business cards, LinkedIn, email, like how do you give them your information? How do you get in touch with them? And I will admit I am terrible at business cards. Some people give out business cards like Halloween candy and they're so good at it. So good at it. That is not me. I am not that person. I forget them. Sometimes I spill things on them. It's not great. Like my score with business cards is not good. Some people love saying like, hey, shoot me a LinkedIn, right? As I mentioned, I'm a little weird about my LinkedIn. So my approach is to use email. And obviously you want to utilize whatever methods work best for you and your contact. You want to do what they're most comfortable with. But one of the things I sometimes say is, hey, you know, why don't you just shoot me a quick email and that way we can be in touch. You know, you'll be in my inbox. to me, I kind of look at it as like a to-do list. So they have, they just kind of shoot it to me, and that way I don't mistype anything. They're the ones sending me the message, and I can make sure that I got it. And I'm like, yeah, just send me a, email that just says test. And then that way, after I'm done talking to them, I like make a little note to myself of like how I know them and that I should follow up with them the next day. To me, that's my strategy, and it's really, really helpful. As I mentioned, following up. So I'm sure that you've all been to networking events where you talk to somebody about the weather, right? You talk to somebody about what they do. Great. They try to sell you something. You're like, okay, whatever, not interested. And then you just fall off the face of the earth. Nobody ever talks to each other. Nobody, engages with each other. Once again, not networking. So in order to make it networking, there should be follow-up of some sort, So if you're like, hey, I know that you're trying to sell me something and I'm not interested. Is there somebody that I can introduce you to? Or, you know what you mentioned about that product, that reminds me of da da da. Can I send you an article? Something like that. I think it's really, really helpful to have that follow-up to show that, you are there to nurture that connection. Set a networking budget. So this is one that someone taught me. This is one of probably the best tips I've ever been given, that I never would have thought about, because when I was in college, I was broke as a joke, right? I had no money. But the person said, always buy the coffee. Always buy the coffee. Always show that person that you appreciate them. Always show that person that you appreciate their time, their energy, their advice, whatever it is that they have to give you. Always buy the coffee, because honestly, that coffee might be worth, I don't know, $10 at most. I don't know. I don't drink coffee. But let's say, that $10 lands you your dream job. That $10 is probably worth it, right? So, I think that it's really important to set that budget. And I think even in a time of, COVID and working from home and whatnot, it's still important to set that budget, because when people give you their time, when people give you their energy, you still have the ability to thank them. You still have the ability to buy them a gift card for coffee, right? You still have the ability to treat them to something nice. So I think that it's really important to set that budget and make sure that you really thank people for what they give you. Now, another one is practice introducing people. So this is something that I think takes a lot of work, but it is so important. So every so often, think of two people who you think should know each other, but don't, right? Who should know each other, but don't, and just introduce them. And then what you can do is follow through with them later and figure out whether that introduction was actually worthwhile or not, so that you can get better at making introductions. You can practice. A lot of times we have our own agendas, we have our own missions, and sometimes all you have to do is just give. You just have to make that connection and build relationships. And once again, maybe you become that broker person that people are like, that's the person, I want that person, I love that person is my best friend, right? So think about that, practice that. It's not an easy thing for everyone to do, but it's it's a skill, right? So I think that it's good to do that. And then what you can also do is you can also form communities. So like I said, I'm a big community person. If you form communities, it helps you manage your networks easier. You have regular get-togethers. It helps different people meet each other. And honestly, if I wish I would have known this like a number of years ago, but that's honestly how I got the closest group of friends that I have. Is I had all these friends from different places, and I said, hey, I'm going to have a party. Everybody come. And I got to introduce my friends to each other, and it was so great. And now it's just like everybody loves each other. It's awesome. I don't have to like split my time, and I can just manage my networks of people much more easily. And then the last one is find reasons for people to come to you. Okay. So especially if you are more introverted or just not as outgoing, maybe you feel a little bit more shy. I think that the majority of people, not all people, but the majority of people find it a little bit hard to start a conversation, even if you are extroverted. I think it's important to do people a favor and give them an excuse to approach you. So you can do or wear something that makes you stand out. And once again, this might make you a little bit uncomfortable. I think with my partner, if I tell him to try on a shirt that has stripes on it. He's like, this shirt is too loud. When I go to conferences, I wear bright yellow. And I do that on purpose. I do that on purpose because people notice that. People notice people who stand out. So you can add accessories, you can add keywords on your name tag, you can do all sorts of things. If you're online, you can share different interests that you have and your thoughts, and people can reach out to you through different searches and learn from you. And one of the things that I have read is that an introvert's favorite way to get people to come to you is giving a presentation, right? So you give a presentation, you get to be the expert on a topic that you love, you care about, it's meaningful to you. And the people that are most interested in your topic are the ones that are going to come and talk to you. So it's pretty neat because that's a great way to build connections as well, finding opportunities for people to come directly to you. So one of the pieces of advice that I saw as I was putting this presentation together is somebody said that as you develop the passions within your life, as you improve the skills that you have, as you grow your network, you'll be able to create more value, more and more and more. It just exponentially grows. The more that you understand your passions, the easier it'll be for you to communicate them. The more that you improve your skills, the more you can actually go and help others. And then the more people you know, the more introductions and connections you can make. So, it's kind of interesting to see that and see that network expand. And then kind of, like I said, with the presentation part, if you share what you're learning with people, your network can grow along with you. So that way, you don't have to fake being an extrovert. You don't have to drain yourself of energy. You don't have to, put yourself in a miserable situation. A lot of people and opportunities will begin to flow to you. Now, there are other important tips and strategies that I think are good to mention. So once again, opening lines. I recommend only asking questions that you want to know the answers to, because a lot of times people can tell that you're inauthentic. People can tell that you're not listening. Sometimes it's nice to say like, hey, what brings you here? Or, what projects have captured your attention lately? What are you looking to get out of, coming to this event? So it's really nice to, be able to kind of find things that you can relate to people about. One of my favorite ones too is like, oh, are you from here? Why do I like to ask that? Well, I like to share my favorite restaurants. I love food. So I'm like, okay, if I can offer you a new restaurant to try, maybe you will remember me when you actually go to that restaurant. And that's actually happened. Some people, I remember I had a friend move here from New York City. She was at a networking event and I told her like, hey, I love your dress. It was bright. It was, bold. And then we were chit-chatting and she's like, yeah, I'm new here. I'm like, oh, let me tell you about my favorite ice cream. It's Salt and Straw. It's amazing. They have all these crazy flavors. It's delicious. She showed up with Salt and Straw to a party that I had. And she was like, oh my gosh, this was incredible. And she was just like, this is the best ice cream I've ever had, whatnot. So it's really cool to be able to share that. And so that's one of the reasons why I like asking that question. You can kind of go on from there. You can say like, oh, what brought you here? Where are you from? How are you liking it so far? Like, what do you, how does this culture here differ from where you're from? If you're at a conference, which, let's be real, conferences aren't going to happen for a while. But if there's a conference, even if it's virtual, ask others, hey, are there any speakers that I should check out? What's your favorite session so far? Is this your first time? How do you feel about these virtual conferences? So that's a good way to do it. You can also ask for introductions. So like, hey, I'm new to the area. This is my first time. I'd love to meet some new people. Would you like to work the room with me? I think that shows, and that's, assuming that person is either A, looking to do the same thing you are, or B, hopefully extroverted so that they can kind of lead you to meet the people, and then you can do a little bit less work, but be a part of it, right? So I've mentioned a lot about introversion and extroversion, so I think it's really important to network for your energy. Plan an exit time if you need to, bail for energy reasons. Figure out what your plan of attack is. Do you need to talk to two people, one person, or like what is your goal? Like what are you going to be satisfied with at the end of the night? And kind of set those goals for yourself. If you're an extrovert, learn to listen. Learn to figure out like how to streamline your message, because a lot of times you're just kind of talking about anything and everything that's in your mind, and that's not how everybody works. So try to spend a little bit more time and energy focusing on listening and your messaging. Another one that I have is give 2 favors before asking for one. So you can start with first, how can I help you? What can I do to help you out? Are you looking for a suggestion or referral, an opportunity? It establishes you as a giver, and potentially somebody that they might want to know because you're not asking anything of them right off the bat. The second could be like, oh, what ideas do you have for me? So you're kind of asking for those ideas that let you kind of add value, but you can add value to them. So it kind of creates that symbiotic relationship where it's back and forth and it's actually a networking opportunity. And then when you're asking for one, you can say something like, hey, who else do you think I should talk to? Or who else do you know that I should talk to? And they can make that introduction. And that's the ask, right? So that's one way of looking at it. I think that it's really important to be giving to your network, because that way you are showing people that you do care about them. Another thing to do is practice your referral bait. So make sure that people understand like what your customers are, what problems your customers might have, how you help them solve their problems, and then practice it. So it could be like, hey, I'm a plumber. I'm looking to connect with local restaurant owners or managers. They often have drainage issues, and I've got some unique solutions for keeping their kitchen running smoothly. Do you know any restaurant owners or managers you could introduce me to? Look at it from the tech side. Hey, I am a software developer, and I'm looking to connect with small businesses. A lot of small businesses tend to have, spend a lot of time and energy trying to debug their code. And that's one of my favorite things about being a software developer. Do you have a small business that you recommend that I contact? Something like that. And then lastly, set aside time specifically for networking. So set your business up, set your you up for success by setting aside a block of time each week to purposefully network. It doesn't have to be in person. You can literally just reach out and just let people know that you're there for them. Let people know that you want to help. Seek people out who are in places that you want to be in the next few years. Ask them, if you can chat with them. We had that message that you can send. Reach out to people that are outside of your area of expertise. Get perspective on what they think is going on in your industry, and then make sure that you follow up with your meetings. And like I said, use that networking budget. Send a thank you. Send that coffee card to their local coffee spot, or potentially like a Starbucks or something if you'd like. So that's all I have for you today. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. I hope that you enjoyed the presentation. It's a big topic. And like I said, I hope that this also helps you cringe a little bit less when you hear the word networking.
Gosh, me too. Thanks, Ophelia. That was really awesome. I had a couple of thoughts while we wait for some questions to roll in. So guys, the chat box is up there, top right-hand corner. Type some questions and then we'll get to those in just a second. I think I was telling you recently too that I even feel awkward at networking events because I am an extrovert. And having some stories like in my back pocket, one of the main things that helps me out a lot too. So it's same thing with interviews. So if you guys are available next week, join us because we're going to talk about some interviewing skills then too. And kind of reminded me of a story I had. There's a little boy from the 1940s named John, grew up in poverty, and he did a newspaper route and gained maybe $10. And with that, he bought a biography, an encyclopedia, of autobiographies, and he looked up a bunch of people, wrote them letters, and got dinner with Colonel Robert E. Lee and influential people, and he ended up being one of the most influential magazine owners with no education from his time. So one of those really cool networking stories.
That is really cool. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. Anybody have any questions for Ophelia? We have a few more minutes. I think you just covered it so thoroughly.
Thanks. Like I said, it's a big topic and it's complicated because we're all people and everyone is so different. So, how you approach it is going to be different. I was talking to my partner about this presentation and I was like, hey, dude, this presentation is good for you because I know how much you hate networking. I invited him to this event I heard about that had free food. Like I said, it gets me in the door. And he was like, you invited me to a networking event. How dare, he was so mad at me. And he actually ended up meeting somebody, which I'm like, can you really be that mad at me? Like you actually made a new connection. But he's so upset. It's just not his favorite thing. Cause like I said, a lot of people just feel like they're asking too much of somebody, or that they like, I don't know, the term schmooze comes in mind, and it just feels a little dirty. Like, you know, a lot of people don't like it.
Very true. Yeah, I like to think of like a couple of different professional stories that I have, and I like the funny approach. I like the funny approach on stuff. So I try to think of humorous stories that are appropriate that I can share at events like that. And I go through it before I go. So, I mean, like you've mentioned before too, preparation is key. So if you do your research ahead of time and have a couple of things ready to go, you don't have to sit there like this and wonder like, who should I talk to? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes all you have to do is find a table or an area where there is one other person, you know, and just say, hey, like, this is, you know, oh, do you not know anybody here either?
Be the fat penguin. I love that.
Did you come for the free food too? You know, like sometimes, honestly, sometimes that gets people, and then you just start the conversation. Like, oh, have you tried the, you know, lobster bisque or whatever your foods are? I guess that's not really finger food, but you
like,
know,
what networking events are you going to with lobster bisque? Let me know what they are.
But like, you know, I just think it's important to like find that mutual thing that is pleasant, right? A lot of times the weather isn't pleasant, like, oh, crazy weather we're having, you know, or oh, it's so nice or so hot, or what, you know, like bring up things that are still relatable, but that put you in a position where the person doesn't feel like it's small talk. It feels real. It feels genuine, you know, because if you're enjoying the food, be like, oh my gosh, have you tried? Like I've done this at a table before where like, I think it was like an egg roll or something. I'm like, oh my gosh, have you had these egg rolls? Dude, try it. Try it. I guarantee you will love it. Like, this is one of the best egg rolls I've ever had. And then we just start the conversation because we have a mutual love of egg rolls, right? So it helps.
Right? And now I want an egg roll.
It helps a lot. It really, really does. So I think, you know, finding those commonalities and feeling that courage to just do that opening line. It's going to be the hardest thing that you do that whole time. And other times, you know, I probably use food as like my networking crutch, but or even beverage. I'll be like, oh, I need to get a new drink, or I need to get a refiller. Oh, you know what? I have to grab one of those egg rolls before they run out. And that's another way to kind of get out of the conversation. I didn't really cover a lot of that because I know that sometimes we end up in conversations where we're just like, I won't be here. Right? Like, how do I get out? And you can, and you can if you want. So if you have a networking friend that you're going to an event with, because a lot of people were like, I don't want to go alone. I'm going to go with somebody. Sometimes what I'll do is you can have a hand signal. So if you put your arm behind your back, you know, and just have it back there, that could be like a, hey, help me sort of symbol. So like there's lots of different ways to do it.
It's really smart.
Yeah, it's helpful to have an out. It's helpful to practice not just your opening line, but your closing line.
Awesome. Well, I guess we'll wrap up a little bit early then. We appreciate everybody joining us. Iman, are you still there?
I am. Yeah, it seems like we don't have any questions in the chat as of right now. But as we said, you know, as the slide said earlier as well, info@edgelink.com. You can send us any questions that you have. And definitely please stay tuned with us for the rest of our episodes. I think Jennifer's going to tell you a little bit about what next week's going to look like.
That's right. We just appreciate everybody joining us and giving Ophelia your attention. Ophelia, thank you again for all your wise information. We do have another meeting next week, same time, every Wednesday. We'll be doing episode 4, and this is with Amy Miller. She's a senior technical recruiter with Amazon. So that should be very interesting. We're really excited to see what she has to offer as well. So join us then. Look for a survey after our meeting today. We'll have just a couple of questions. Shouldn't take you more than 10-15 seconds to fill that in. Maybe give us a little bit of feedback. We'd really appreciate it. So again, thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll see you next week around the same time.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody.